It's so exciting to be here. I've loved this school for quite a while. I was just thinking tonight that the first time I came here was 1992. I came here and actually had the guts to take the drawing marathon, which was very humbling, very difficult, trying little thing to do for 1 week. As I walked around this small town I still live in today, I would photograph sort of situations that I thought were quite strange. I never asked people to move. I never directed them. I was very much like a street photographer. And the things that I kept coming back to were the clothes people wore, the way they treated each other, the way they stood, the space they gave between each other as they stood, the hand in the pocket, the tie, the seersucker suit, the fact that I knew my sons were never going to probably wear a suit and a tie again, the formality of the East Coast. And I cut the heads off of the people in the pictures because I didn't want the photograph to be focused on the people themselves. I wanted the viewer to look at the gestures and how people really reacted when they were sort of standing or moving around each other. In about 1989, at the Sun Valley Art Center, where I learned everything sort of that I knew about photography, Mark Klett became the director, and he taught color. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm not going to like that. And with my same Pentax camera, I started focusing more and more on a narrative that I became interested in as I was taking these classes. And the classes I was taking in Sun Valley that were given by all the top photographers in the country. It was just a miracle that they came to this little ski resort. But I like to point out this photograph because I think it's the first time that I ever really directed someone in a photograph of mine to actually do something for the purpose of the narrative. I wanted to make pictures about family, the fact that I thought that there was too much distance between family members, the fact that I didn't think family members were affectionate enough between each other. So I asked my son Phil to stand on that diving board. I asked Amy to stand on the left, Brian to stand on the right. This was too stiff for me. It was not really what I wanted, but it was a beginning. And then in 1982, I moved from a 35 millimeter camera. I don't like to talk about technicalities too much, but this was a huge, giant change. Mark Klett used a 4x5, which is a view camera, the bellows, the ground glass, upside down, black thing over the head. And I'm very untechnical, and that was a great change for me, but what I wanted was more detail, more resolution, which I'll talk about a lot, in the pictures, and then I started making the pictures bigger. And so this is one of the very first pictures I made with that view camera. I started focusing much more on family, on architecture, on the house, the home, the way people decorated their houses, how they lived in those houses. I also started at this point thinking about Renaissanceian Italian painters and Dutch 17th century painters because I was frustrated by the flat page that photographs are made on. I was trying to create space. I was reading a lot about the structure of art, how to create space, and would make these sort of devices such as the hammock and would try with great sort of difficulty to try to make the viewer's eye move around the photographic page. I never really, still, this is 1982, asked people to do too much, but I wanted to photograph inside. And with a view camera, that was very difficult. I didn't use lights at this point. I was working on my own, so I had to ask the people in the pictures to hold still. This is called Beverly, Jill, and Polly. And so for 1982-83, I went on with this view camera, the 4x5, inside, asking family members, that's my son, my stepmother's son and daughter, who happen to be the same age as my son, in the living room that looks very much like I grew up. And I was frustrated because I had to still ask people to hold still because otherwise they'd be blurred, they were long exposures, and these pictures were stiff. But this is where I was at that point until I made this picture called Sunday New York Times. And one of the things that I always will be grateful to is to find a great subject. And that subject, especially in photography, has to do with the kind of human being who's kind of a ham, uninhibited, and mostly unaware of the camera. And this family was that. They also knew what a 4x5 was. They were interested in photography, and they didn't stiffen up or move around when I came into the room to photograph. So I knew they hung out together like this. I knew I wanted the father at the head of the table. Everyone else sort of fell into place. I had to ask Michael to hold still, so I'm shouting 1,000, 2,000, and luckily everybody else just sort of sat there. I didn't move the bottle of milk, I didn't move the beer bottle. And in 1983, this photograph was accepted into a show at the Museum of Modern Art called Big Pictures by Contemporary Photographers. And that show was pivotal in the history of photography. It was about the fact that photographers were making bigger pictures. They weren't posters, they weren't sandwiching them together or taping them together. And it was a thrill to be in this show, and that show had some of the photographers that I still get sort of coupled with that started the movement called staged photography or arranged photography. And went on in 1983 to continue to try to take more pictures of family inside. This is called the graham cracker box. Again, we just came back from tennis. The kids are in there. The dishes haven't been washed. Everything's left. I sort of still came from the school of Winogrand and Lee Friedlander, where I didn't feel I could move anything or arrange anything, and yet I asked the babysitter to sit over there because I, again, was trying so hard to make the space be inviting for the viewer to come into, and maybe move the graham cracker box. Yes, I began to move things. I just sort of made the graham cracker box open so it was falling out. I had this idea of saying, this is perfect, but just beware. There are things that can fall apart. People started asking me if I had hired a production designer because so many people had not seen interiors like this, photographed with a camera, a 4x5 camera with these pictures were now 4x5 feet, 48 by 60 inches. And I went on to make more narratives. This is about a subject matter that still interests me today, and that is the respect of a child toward their parent. The way I was brought up, that after we moved to Sun Valley, where things were very casual and low key, and there nobody would think of asking their kids to stand up when an adult came into the room. So I went on to really think about that kind of narrative. And then once in a while, out of maybe 400 sheets of film I'd shoot in a year, I'd get a picture that was up to my standard. And this is called The Reception. This was my sister's wedding in 1985. And I just want to go through and dissect this picture just to let you know a bit about what happens when I take a picture like this. Hold on 1 minute while I get a drink of water. Okay, this is a wedding. I'm by myself. I've got the 4x5. I'm carrying the film backs between my legs almost. I'm trying to look dignified. I go into a very small room that I know. This is my aunt's apartment. I've grown up going to this apartment. I know that it's spectacular and special. I don't know, and I'll never know, and maybe my sister Jill remembers whether I asked her to stand up or not. But what the miracle is, what the gift is, the gesture of Jill, her hands, the gorgeous dress, the hat, and then look behind her at the angel that is part of the lamp, the angel that happens to have the same kind of dress that you can see through the angel's legs. The angel has a halo that looks like Jill's hat, the two flowers that are like earmuffs behind Jill's ears, and then Andrea, who's sitting there, and this is all in seconds, red hair that matches the walls, has the white dress. I think to myself, should I ask Andrea to get out of there because she's blocking the viewer's entry into the picture? But oh no, I'm going to let her stay there because she's got the slit in the dress, and that will let the viewer's eye have a little more opening to get in, and then I shout to Paul, my half-brother, to look at Jill, and then you get the trio that gets around, and then there's the Picasso. The Picasso with the hands that are like Jill's, that are like the angel's hands, with the strange eyes and where he's looking, and then the painting of the three apples on the right. And to me, this is a miracle. You know, how do you get this? So this is 1985, The Reception. And then Jill, who's one of my great subjects. You know, I always think about Woody Allen or Ingmar Bergman, who go back to the same actors. Sorry, I'm not comparing myself to them, but it's a good comparison to say, why do certain directors or photographers go back to the same characters, the same subjects over and over? Well, first of all, you know them so well, you don't have to explain anything. But that's not just it. Jill is one of the few people I photographed. My friend Sheila is another, who is oblivious to the camera, who knows herself, and who's uninhibited. And this is 1987, the first time that I had a subject look into the camera. It's funny how it can take 1 year, 2 years, these stepping stones to get to a certain place where I said, okay, I'm going to let this happen. That's only because Jill had the ability to look through the camera. Most people that you photograph are looking at the camera. But then look at this Dutch 17th century setup. The light I have, I'm finally using lights. I'm sorry, I forgot to say that. This is a huge difference. That means people can move. I can keep the resolution. Jill's husband's helping me in the back. I'm finally asking somebody to help me. But look at the line going down the middle of the sink, and then the brush I decided to bring out a little bit, which is a Dutch 17th century device, just to tweak the eye of the viewer. But then the most important thing is that line of the mirror, which is like a great stroke of a pencil or charcoal to bring that eye of the viewer into the center of the picture, but then you get the doghouse. And I tried many other pictures with the curtains closed, but then you get the radiator, and then you get the sill above it, and all these levels. And then, Polly, I would say to them, and this is how I direct the people in my picture, I'd say, okay, come forward, come on, keep walking. And still shooting one film, the next film. And then what happens is people start talking and they start forgetting me. But this is on the cover of my book, Theater of Manners, and it's called Jill and Polly in the Bathroom.